for personal branding, to me, branding your own identity in terms of a personal brand is a skill that is not utilized that much in society right now. You're starting to see it a lot with the influencer side of things and all of that. But for me, branding a personal brand for me looks like, how do I embed luxury concierge into healthcare first and foremost? That's kind of my wheelhouse. I love that. And I can talk about membership models all day and how we can create those. But legacy also and personal brand to me is, how do you model being a businessman and a father and a career-minded person, and balancing all of those things. And so for me, personal brand is going to be focused on that.
Beyond the Blueprint podcast, welcome back to episode 2 with Joel George. I'm your host, Branson Bowen, and we are going to jump into some life stuff.
Love it.
How we balance business and life, personal branding, a little bit of spirituality, and then some rapid fire questions. So
awesome, man.
We'll kind of take it off just to kind of piggyback off of episode 1. You know, you're doing a lot of stuff, right?
Yep.
You seem very compassionate about your family and how you spend time with your family. How do you balance it all?
$1 million question. I like how we start with that one. That's great. You know, I've really figured out a way to compartmentalize my time. I think that's where what it comes down to. I think great entrepreneurs, great businessmen figure out ways to compartmentalize their time. And so, you know, it's not an easy balance, right? When you're talking about, I'm in a career, I'm also doing my Ph.D., I'm finishing that up. I'm also being a dad, trying to be super dad, and then also supporting my wife too as well, and doing date nights and making sure that fire's still alive too as well. And so I think the biggest thing that I've learned is that you have to try to figure out the way to bring your best version of yourself to every single one of those things. And if that means sitting down and sitting in the driveway before you even walk into the door, right, to bring your best version of yourself and decompress, then do that. Yeah. I found a lot of ways from a compartmentalization standpoint on figuring out what is it that brings me joy. Golf is one thing that brings me joy for sure, right? And getting out there, just being away from everyone, serenity. And my wife has awarded me those moments where I get to do that sometimes, right? And so I think that's one thing too as well. But that's what it's about. It's about bringing your best version of yourself. And so figuring out times in the day where, if that's a podcast that you listen to, if that's a book that you're really into, if that's prayer, right? If it's prayer, just getting down and just talking to God for a little bit too as well. Yeah,
I mean, it's definitely a big deal. I think, you know, men, we naturally compartmentalize, right? That's just something, you know, my mother's a psychologist, and she's always said, you know, men think in boxes, right? Yep. We've got a box for work, we've got a box for family, We've got a box for the gym, I've got all our different boxes. And when you're running really fast, it is definitely hard to realize that and bring your best self to that box, like you mentioned. That decompression phase is so pivotal.
Yeah.
Pivotal. You know, for me, one of the things that I like to do is, like, when I leave the office or leave work, I sit in silence on my way home, and I'll just drive and just decompress until I get home. That way, when I get at home, like, sometimes it's to a fault, right? Because my wife's like, "Hey, how was work? What do you do?" And I'm like, "I don't really want to talk about it. That box is closed. Yeah. I'm spending time with you now." But it's really helped. And then, especially like you mentioned, spending time in prayer or meditation in the morning. You know, I'm an early riser. I like to get up before the sun comes up, and spending that time just to kind of ground myself before you go out into the world, because there's so many different things that can happen in your day.
Yeah.
That grounding yourself, spending time with Jesus, spending time within yourself to position your best self to that day is important. And it pays off. I've seen it pay off, you know? So what are some things that you've kind of really done? You said golf was one of them. That's one of mine too. Golf and hunting, spending time outdoors is huge.
It's a big thing for me. Another thing is just really being intentional with my kids. That's what really truly grounds me. I have a young golfer on my hands. I have an 8-year-old that's a golfer. I have a drama queen or a drama kid, basically, as my 11-year-old. She's a star actress in her musicals and all of that. And when you go back to those things and you go back to kind of watch, I just watched her musical the last week, right? And so when you get back to those moments, you go back and you think about, man, what my elementary school days were like, how things were so simple. And if you still have that childlike mentality, even as you grow older and you get into business, I feel like that's what truly grounds you.
Sure.
Right? Is having a childlike mentality. People are going to be upset with you, but in a childlike mentality, it's where it just rubs off your shoulders and you just move on to the next thing, right? And we have to be, as businessmen, we have to be models of that too as well.
Right. And it's kind of like twofold. You think of children, there's one instance, right? Like if you say no to your daughter, right?
Yeah.
It's the end of the world.
Yeah.
Right. But it's because they're so invested in that one moment. That they really like every moment is that last moment, right? I mean, I can remember as a kid, like, you lose a ball game or you have a relationship and you think it's the end of the world. And I think we lose that as we grow older, right? We lose that as we have more experience, especially in business, because we're thinking so far ahead and we're like, okay, well, if this doesn't happen, I need to do this. And if this doesn't happen or this does happen, I need to position myself in this way. But I think it is healthy to still have a sense of that, right? You got to be strategic.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah, absolutely.
But it makes you present in those moments in your life.
Yeah. And I found a lot of times when you think about success, I think success can be so many different things. As a businessman, success is not just the money, right? It's none of that really. It's really, I go back to first principles. How is your family health, and how is your family mental status, and how is your family, are you cultivating your family? If your family is in the right position and they're good, business just comes normally, right? And it just comes as a byproduct of how you treat your family and how you treat your peers.
Are you ready to go beyond the blueprint? Introducing Nexus, the ultimate game changer for commercial real estate and development professionals. Nexus revolutionizes how deals are made and projects come to life. With our cutting-edge SaaS platform, we're revolutionizing the built environment, making your workflow seamless. Vendors gain instant access to opportunities tailored to their needs, while organizations find consultants, vendors, and contractors with a click of a button. Our all-in-one mapping and deal-making interface powers municipalities and site selectors to shape the future of cities nationwide. Join Nexus today and be a part of the future of commercial real estate and construction. Visit our website now to pre-register and get immediate access to what is to come. Visit gonexus.us. The power to transform your project starts here.
And scripture is very clear about that.
Yep.
Right? I mean, the most important thing is, how your relationship with Christ,
right?
But also your relationship with your family.
Absolutely.
And I'm a big proponent in that. Now, you have instances, my brother asked me this a few weeks ago. He's like, because he's younger, he's a pilot, he's trying to, be in business and do his own thing, make a name for himself. And he's like, how do people like get great success, but their family life is terrible? I'm like, we have instances. People just work hard,
for sure.
And you have. But if you want to be a strong Christian man in a very healthy household that then is also successful in business, you have to have your relationship with Christ and your relationship with your family first.
Yeah.
And the fruits of that, God will provide that throughout your life. And that means in business as well.
No, absolutely. And the fruits of that are also a way you're going to see that in your family too as well, right? The fruits of it is not always that next deal that you get and the next thing that happens that God has completely like blessed you with, but it's also just the happiness you see in your family. And so I'm a big believer in that and how to engrave that and ingrain that into your family life, but also in business.
Is there something that you do specifically with your family to keep that whole?
Yeah, so we are, growing up in the church and being in the church and doing worship and all of that. It's like church has become a weekly thing for us, right? It's life. And so we have been consistent with that and really just honing in on that and focusing on that. But I also think like there is an aspect of kindness that goes a long way. In business, in family life, for me, it's how are you modeling Christ's love? And Christ's love is modeled through kindness. acts of service. And my wife will tell you this, I'm not the acts of service kind of guy when it comes to that in our marriage. I'm the words of affirmation guy.
That's
I'm
not
going to
your
tell
love
you.
language.
That's my love language. My words of affirmation is like, babe, I love you. You look amazing. You know, like that's her. Yeah. So, and so, it's, you know, that's one of those things. And so if she tells me, I'm a words of affirmation guy, if she tells me, hey, you're being a good dad, like that to me means everything more than anything else. And so, yeah, I think it's about mirroring what that looks like and what's God's call on your life.
Sure. And so as your kids have gotten older, have you seen the way you deal with life become differently because you want to be a better example of that Christ love for them?
Absolutely. I would say even more, right? Our kids are growing up in a society that sometimes doesn't have truly an identity anymore. Sure. And so for me, it's now about, I can model it only so much, right? I want them to understand, model it like Jesus. That's it. At the end of the day, don't look at daddy. Right. Daddy's only not even any 10% where I want you to be. But I am going to put you in the right scenarios. I'm going to protect. I'm going to provide for you, just as the Bible has told us to do as fathers and as men. But at the end of the day, your gold star, your standard needs to be being like Jesus.
Right. Right. You know, it's an interesting perspective because I think that, one, I appreciate this conversation because I do think that in our generation, these conversations need to be had. Right. You know, as successful men, we need to make sure that the next generation, even our generation, our peers, walk a line of being a Christ-like business person or just a person, you know, because we can implement that throughout our business life, right? Because, you know, you don't have to be, you know, in your business, right? When you get hundreds of employees and just tell them, hey, do you know Jesus? You know, that's not what, you have to do. No. But if your fruits of your life and how you handle people and how you handle conversations, especially tough conversations.
For sure.
At the end of the day, that's what you really become known for.
Yeah.
Right. And it's a major piece in how we grow this next generation.
Right. And you know, the old saying is you can't bring all your possessions to your gravesite, right? You can bring your integrity though. Sure. And your integrity goes such a long way. Sure. And the best model of integrity was Christ. And so in my mindset, and it is always about actions versus words, right? And so I do believe that you don't have to be going out there and preaching the gospel to every single person. Sure. But if they see the kindness and genuineness in your heart, they're going to be curious and they're going to ask, hey, what is it that keeps you grounded? And that's your opportunity.
Yeah, I've always said that's how the Holy Spirit works.
Yeah.
Right. It sparks a curiosity. It's like, hey, he's got all this stuff going on and maybe it's a lot of negative, but he's so kind.
Exactly.
He dealt with this situation so genuinely, that then sparks that curiosity. And it's like, hey, you know, they Absolutely. Ask you what's going on? How do you deal with that? And then you have an opportunity to open that door. So let's talk a little bit about what your legacy is and what you want to be known for.
Man, that's an awesome question. For me, legacy is really focused on how do I diversify the industry that I'm in, and really making sure people understand that not just Asian Americans, but Indian people, and we're not just seen in different boxes of being the doctor, the engineer, and the lawyer that you've stereotypically seen us in, but we're in every single industry all across the U.S. and globally, right? In the creative industry, in the arts, and all of that. For me, legacy looks like that, is really redefining what that looks like. But most importantly, legacy to me is going to be focused on how do I model being a family man, also a businessman that doesn't get caught up in the world, sure. Doesn't get caught up in all the newest things. Don't get me wrong. I love nice things, right? That's my thing. I do love nice things. And I'll be the first to say that, but not getting caught up in finding identity in those things, sure. Right? And I think that my parents have kind of grounded us in a way that have taught us that. And so I think that's what legacy is going to look like. And how do I impact people, and how many people can I impact? And if that's not in the industry that I'm in, it might be just an encouraging word, right, to their life, that I can speak into their life and what I can do.
Well, and that goes so far. You mentioned earlier that you affect one person, right? And then that person talks, and then that person. And so, how you treat people, and even if it's not massive change, which I think you're going to make massive waves in the industry.
Oh, thanks,
already
man.
been done.
I appreciate that.
But how you interact with people one-on-one, I think there is an opportunity to continue that legacy, because then people will, start to talk about that, start to embody the same thing. Maybe you become a mentor to that person or whatever. And then that that's building the next generation, and allowing that to continue to grow.
Today's episode is brought to you by Bryce Knuth of Insurance Office of America. As a contractor or real estate owner in Florida, you've likely experienced the impact of rising insurance premiums year after year. With the challenging insurance marketplace, having a specialist who focuses on your industry is critical now more than ever before. If you'd like a second set of eyes on your current insurance program, or don't have a relationship with your current broker, please contact Bryce Knuth at 407-697-6944 via call or text, or email bryce.knuth@ioausa.com. Don't let rising insurance costs catch you off guard. Reach out to Bryce today.
So as you kind of build out Joel George, what does that personal branding journey look like?
Man, I love that question too as well. So for personal branding, to me, branding your own identity in terms of a personal brand is a skill that is not utilized that much in society right now. You're starting to see it a lot with the influencer side of things and all of that. But for me, branding a personal brand for me looks like, how do I embed luxury concierge into healthcare? First and foremost, that's kind of my wheelhouse. I love that. And I can talk about membership models all day, and how we can create those. But legacy also and personal brand to me is, how do you model being a businessman and a father and a career-minded person? And balancing all of those things. And so for me, personal brand is going to be focused on that. The visibility is going to be from a healthcare perspective. How do I stay innovative in the newest trends that are happening? But how do I embed a servant leadership approach to all of that?
Sure. So what advice would you give to someone that's younger that is like, what is personal brand? And how do I do that? Right. What advice would you get? Because, obviously you've done well in building your personal brand. What advice would you give someone that's younger, that's just kind of starting out?
So you have to define your goal. First and foremost, define your identity, define your goal, and what you truly want to focus in on. I've talked to a lot of mentors and mentees, basically, and I've asked them, tell me, what is it that you really want to focus on? What's your lane? You can be a jack of all trades, or you can be excellent at one thing. Michael Jordan was excellent at one thing, right? He's the GOAT, right? And so he was great at one thing. I tend to tell people, focus on that lane, figure out that lane that you want to be in, and then build your brand off of that. Whether that's clinical, whether that's operations, whether that's administrative, or it could be in the hospitality industry, whatever it is, right? Find that lane and then start building your brand and staying true to yourself through the whole thing. You can create an incredible brand by just being true to yourself and who you are, putting content out there that is focused on being true to yourself, but here's my niche, like here's what I'm focused on. So I would say defining your goal is the most important thing, and then execute. There's a lot of people in this world right now that talk a lot, right? And we have a lot of ideas. I'll be the first to say I can write 5 or 6 ideas right now about where the future of healthcare is going to go. But execution is the key. And how do you create the execution? How do you bring the right people involved? And don't think that you can do it all on your own. Find the smartest person in the room and use them. Yep.
I'm glad that you touched on being true to yourself.
Yep.
I think that that's a huge component that is not talked about enough. I think in a world where we live in social media and influencers and, people trying to get famous, and I think there is a level that people don't really talk about, that you see a lot of these people who fall, or they become really depressed,
Yep.
or they become, because they get so famous, but they're not, they have to be fake. They feel like they're fake. It's what's the imposter syndrome,
Sure.
right? And I think being true to yourself is so important as you build a brand, because in today's society, there is a massive opportunity to build a brand. You've got things like podcasts, you've got things like speaking at events, or, social media, or whatever. And I think there is a great opportunity to build that. But I think if you are not true to yourself, you're going to end up in a hole where you're trying to please the culture and the norms of today. And that changes on a daily basis. People want different things today than they wanted yesterday. People want different things a week from now than they want today.
Yeah.
And if you're constantly trying to be a chameleon in that space, you're going to lose who you are. Yeah. And as a believer, I kind of boil it down to a few things, and they kind of work in tangent. You got to know who Christ is. Yeah. You know who your maker is. You have to know who he made you to be. Then you will know yourself. If you can stay true to those three things, you build your brand around that, you will always be true to yourself. Me sitting here talking to you is no different than me sitting here talking to you at the coffee shop.
Exactly.
Or if I'm at an event, or I'm, talking to a client on a construction job site, it's the same thing.
It's the same thing.
And there's a level of not only confidence, but secureness that is brought through that as you build your personal brand, because you don't have to fake it. You don't have to be someone who they think you should be.
I completely agree with you. And I think even building your personal brand, you find people that are unbiased that will tell you the truth. Sure. You gotta surround yourself with people that will tell you the truth of who you are, and they keep you accountable. Even if you don't want to hear it. Even if you don't want to hear it. You know who keeps me and tells me the truth is my kids. Yeah. They'll be the first to tell me, like, no, that sucks. Actually, that's not really a good idea.
So surround yourself with a bunch of young people.
Yeah, exactly. So, and it's a humbling experience, right? It's a humbling experience because we tend to think we know it all in terms of in our industry, and then you talk to young consumers and they're like, no, we actually don't like that. It's probably better that you do it this way. Or my youngest will be like, that doesn't look good on you. You need to put something else on. There you go, right?
All right, I'm
done. Yeah. So yeah, absolutely. I think that's what it is the accountability factor too as well. Sure. Find the people and surround yourself with a small group of people. As I've gotten older, my group of people, my circle has gotten smaller.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think that's just natural. It's a natural progression because you start to trust and really know the ones that will keep you truly accountable.
Yeah, I mean, I think your community is a major piece of life. We're not supposed to do this life alone.
Absolutely.
And I think that your circle getting smaller is a natural thing that happens as you progress, right? As you become more mature, as you become more successful, as you have a family, you're smaller, it gets tighter and tighter. And I don't think that's a bad thing.
No.
It's quality over quantity.
Absolutely.
In a way. And from what I've experienced is pretty much the same thing. But what I've been very grateful for is that unconditional love that I get from that small group. Right. I don't have to perform and be the best at everything, and then they are going to accept me into the circle. Or, I can just shoot the shit.
Yep.
Right. We can sit here and talk about whatever, and they accept me. They know who I am, but then they're going to challenge.
They're going to challenge you.
They're going to say, okay, what are you doing about this? How are you walking in line with God's will for your life? How are you, treating people? How are you treating your family? And then how are you aligning that with your, career goals and all that stuff?
Yeah. And in this market too, as well, specifically in Orlando, there's a performance culture, I would say, out here too, as well. And you just have to you have to thread that line very, very softly because you want to be true to yourself and genuine.
No, absolutely. All right, let's jump to some rapid fire questions.
Love it. Let's do it.
So, first thing, what is something that most people don't know about you?
Man, I love sneakers.
Okay.
So that's one thing that a lot of people probably do know that about me. I'm a shoe guy. So I like shoes. I like to make sure they're matching a lot of my outfits
There
and
you
all
go.
of that. It's a big thing for me. But also, I mean, I think people just probably found this out today, but I'm a musician, sing, and I play guitar and just I love acoustic guitar.
You can go down to the karaoke bar every
I
now.
could.
Yeah, there
I
you
could.
go. Maybe we could do a karaoke event.
You know, my thing is like acoustic R&B, man. I
Yeah.
love acoustic R&B. And R&B is one of the genres that I just love, man. There's something better than 90s R&B.
Sure.
You know?
Most of 90s music was
It's
great.
amazing.
When are you the most productive?
Most productive, I would say when I want to have a cup of coffee after
Espresso?
espresso.
Yeah.
Double espresso after that, and I know that I've sat down and everything is off my plate and I can focus. I would say that's most productive for sure.
Who's your inspiration?
I have so many inspirations, but I would say my wife is probably my biggest inspiration right now, man. She's just super mom and does everything, and she's just has such a caring heart, and so she's my inspiration.
Sure.
Yeah.
What advice would you give your younger self?
Man, resiliency, be resilient, right? Learn how to really take punches and just get back up and keep going. There were moments in my life when I was young that I just wallowed in like the failures of life. And I missed an opportunity to get back up, and I could have missed an opportunity to do something more productive.
Sure.
And so I would say, stay resilient.
There's a quote I love that says, fail forward.
Right.
Right. So every time you fail, you just, as long as you keep going forward, you're
Right.
good. You're good. Let's see. Oh, this one. What scares you?
What scares me? But the biggest scare for me is probably is focused on just not having enough time with my kids when they're young. Yeah, that's scary. The scariest thing for me is really being there, being intentional with them, and not trying to miss a moment that's going to define their lives.
What's the biggest compliment you've ever received?
Wow. I would say kind. You're just a kind guy. I love that compliment though, man, because that's truly my motto, right? That's like my thing. Yeah.
Last one, if you had to ask or tell God one thing, what would it be?
Tell him thank you. It's all I would say the moment I see him would be thank you, because I would not be able to do anything I do without his grace and mercy.
Awesome.
You want to leave our audience with anything last moment?
Yeah. So, I would say, at the end of the day, in a business standpoint, in any kind of business transaction that you're making or you're with, if you really go ahead of it and you focus on genuine relationships, talk about this all the time. Transactional relationships are gone. Nobody wants you to talk to them just because you're in business development and you're talking to me because you want a job. No, I'm not about that. I'm actually more about how do we create true relationships with people. So focus on relationships, and everything else will kind of set into place, and focus on being who you are.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Well, Beyond the Blueprint podcast, this has been a great episode, number 2 with Joel George. I'm your host, Branson Bowen. Make sure you like and subscribe to the channel, and stay tuned for more episodes to come. We've got a great season 2 lined up, so you're not going to miss out. Thanks, Joel.
Love it. Thank you.
See you guys soon.